Town Board meeting for December 5th, 2022 to order. First item on the agenda is the approval. Patrick, any changes?
No changes or additions, Mr. Chair.
All right, need a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the agenda as noted.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 3 is approval and payment of bills. Steve, you signed?
I signed those. I move to approve payment of bills.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? On item 4, I need approval of minutes from November 21st meeting. Anybody have any changes?
I saw no changes. I move to approve the minutes of the November 21st, 2022 meeting.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 That motion passes. Now, consent agenda. 1, 2, 3, 4. What do we got, about 8, 9 of them?
Mr. Chair, if it pleases the board, please pull number 5F for additional discussion.
All right, that's the only one. Board have any other?
No.
Hearing none, I need a motion on the consent.
I will move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? That motion carries. On consent agenda, item 5F. This is T-Mobile site lease, 4141 Hoffman Road.
Yes, Mr. Chair, staff defers to legal review before we give this for final consideration to the board. Our lease contracts do need his at least once over. We can table this until the December 19th meeting.
Is that okay with the board?
I think that's an excellent idea.
All right. Do I have a motion for set?
I will move to table consent item 5F T-Mobile site lease until the second board meeting of December.
I'll second that.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, moving on.
Thank you, board.
6 is old business. It's the White Bear Township North Oaks Water Committee update.
Yes, Mr. Chair, as you know, yourself, me, and town legal Chad Lemons here have been attending our monthly meetings with the city of North Oaks regarding the White Bear Lake level lawsuit, as well as ongoing consideration for water management between our two organizations. What I bring to you tonight is just kind of an update as to where we started, where we are, and what we are considering for the future. I would defer to Chad to get us going if he's prepared, and we can discuss a couple of ideas that the committee is pushing based upon our last conversation in November.
Well, you first want to go over it. It was you, myself, Tom.
Dale Reed.
Tom from North Oaks.
Tom Watson.
Tom Watson.
Yep.
And then Andrew is from the President of the Homeowners Association?
Andrew Haskins, yes.
Okay. Well, those were the people that were with Chad there.
Correct.
All right.
Well, I mean, one of the ideas that came up, and I think it makes a certain amount of sense, was we could, to withdraw the termination letter and sit down and meet and work out a framework for modifying the existing
JPA.
thank you, JPA, which can be done. And the JPA is a contract. A contract can be modified by both parties. And I think it would make a certain amount of sense to sit down. When that JPA was done, it was well before any of these lawsuits, well before we even had a water issue. Now with the water issue, it needs to be a little more sophisticated than what it presently is.
When you say redone, do you mean completely started over from scratch or
No,
amended? And
amended.
changed? Okay.
I think the amendment, I'll leave it up to the board and Public Works and Larry, TKDA in certain areas, but it needs to be reworded in terms of how, what do we do in the event of, in the event that the allocations are cut again?
Mm-hmm.
What do we do in the event, we require the watering, the irrigation ban, those kind of things. That basically the whole point being is that the city of North Oaks ordinances and the town ordinances should pretty much mirror each other.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, they should mirror ours because we run the system.
So I think the kind of the simple answer to where we left it, I think it was last week when we got together with them, was to amend the JPA, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, we were going to eliminate the termination period, the 24-month, that
Right.
clause within the JPA, and replace it with measurable objectives that if they are violated or not upheld, would signal the immediate termination of the JPA, correct, Chad?
Yes, I mean, and we could also tie, remember under the law that any change made to our water allocations by the DNR, we have the right to appeal those administratively, which is what we did already. So we can tie any change, and as long as we're appealing it, they can't change our allocation. So we could tie the contract to any appeal. We can make it. I guess what I'm saying is we have to make it more sophisticated. I mean,
I have as it relates to the JPA, so I'm not clear. So the city of North Oaks, they have a similar arrangement with the developers for all the property on the west side of Centerville Road, separate from this JPA, correct? They'd have some kind of agreement to supply water. Mm-hmm. So whatever we do, I mean, we have to tie this all together somehow?
yeah,
Both development plus the city,
that's
so we don't get tangled up in.
Exactly. You're exactly right. We need a more sophisticated system than what we presently have.
But Chad, it doesn't, the homeowners association, that's strictly homeowners, so these larger developments are through the developer? Or is it still a homeowner? Both. I mean, they're still homeowners.
Mm.
Well,
Yeah.
see, that's
That's a good question.
when North Oaks has got to explain their whole system over there. I mean, you do have the homeowners association, but the question is, who is governed by that? As far as when I've examined title to properties in North Oaks, their deeds contained restrictions that referred to the homeowners association. And I think that they have to, what it comes down to is this: North Oaks has to explain their relationship with the association, because I'm interpreting the new developments that have been undertaken by the North Oaks company, North Oaks Farm, I think they call themselves, as being separate from the association, because that land, as far as I know, and I'd have to look at the certificates of title on that, but my understanding is that land is not governed by the association, because they never added those restrictions which gave the association the power to govern that property.
Well, but it still somehow has to come back to the city of North Oaks, because that's how we bill them for the water and sewer.
Well, that again, the relationship over there is interesting, because a lot of the control is with the North Oaks Homeowners Association.
Yeah.
Not all of it.
And that is part of my concern, is that they got like rogue operation. We deal with the municipality of the city of North Oaks, but there's really the sub homeowners association that carries a lot of leverage as to what they do, and that goes all the way down to the sprinklers and everything else that we've had conversations about.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me put together a little packet on North Oaks and how it operates.
Well, either way, North Oaks still has to abide by our water usage of the 7590. Mm-hmm. They still have to abide by our restrictions and enforcement, even though their people have to do it, we can't do that. So that's all got to still be kind of spelled out in this JPA, correct?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Ed, did you want to continue?
Well, I was just going to say a couple things. Besides this JPA, I mean, we talked about public education. We talked about getting maybe Velamo involved, because they have a really good system is set up for getting the people to at least know what's going on, especially with this water thing. So it wasn't just the JPA that we talked about. There were a number of things, but it all kind of goes back to the JPA. I mean, the biggest one is enforcement and usage, and we have to have that squared away.
So I think through further discussion with this committee, and by the way, I would suggest, and I talked a little bit about it with Chad and Dale when we were driving back, is that until we've given the framework of the measurable criteria that we're looking for that City of North Oaks needs to adhere to, which also will constitute a discussion and implementation of enforcement and penalty, I still recommend that we don't terminate the current
Termination.
I
I
think
still
it's,
think we stay under that path until we've got everything in place for an agreement.
I agree with that, and also they've had a change in leadership within the city of North Oaks. I believe the mayor and some council have been
I think there was three.
changed,
Tom said.
which may want to go in a total different direction. So I'm not interested in eliminating it at this point either. So
And that was one thing Tom did bring up. It's going to be a challenge for him to get all these new council members up to speed on this too. So
He's got a lot of education he's got to do. And Tom's the guy to do it. I mean, he's got,
no, he's been around there for a while, so he's
35 years.
got some history there.
yeah.
he's on the board.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And he helped draft the original JPA, as I remember.
Yes.
Remember from meeting with
Happy
him.
to share that. So I guess this was just kind of an up-to-date or an update discussion that we wanted to give you. But for all intents and purposes, as we move along now, nothing's going to change until we've got some concrete framework in place.
Is it outside of if we go down the road to amend at some point to just have a discussion on conversion plans so that they're not going off on their merry little way doing something that may cause issues with us if we ever decide to convert? Is that out of the...
Well, we could bring that up, sure. But really, fundamentally, all the JPA is simply a supply agreement. We supply them with water under certain conditions. That's what it comes down to. So if we convert to surface system, that's how where the water comes from that we supply them is not important. It's not important to them.
Yeah.
What's important is that we supply the water. That's it. But I think
the major part of North Oaks is all private wells anyway. That would be a major issue to try to get some infrastructure there to get them storing
But
water.
there has been some, and maybe it was at this meeting group, that there has been some indications that the state themselves is looking at private wells in the application as it relates to the aquifers, et cetera. So landscape could dramatically change in the next several years, and private wells could become a thing of the past.
I think the timing of all these discussions are very good. I think they're critical right now, and I don't think we should be skirting along under a JPA that's 30 years old when the reality has changed. And so it's been slow. This last meeting was technically the first one that we had agreed upon talking points about what it is we need to do. And we went through the enforcement requirements. We went through the surface water solution. And I think, I mean, to his credit, Tom was the guy that's introduced the idea of holding the city of North Oaks to major requirements in terms of how we go forward in managing water with them. So this has been it's been a good discussion. It's been good in its timing, and we're getting full cooperation from the folks that we're working with right now. So
I think the dialogue's important
totally agree.
as a user of the water.
And plus, too, the more this is out front, the more the residents of North Oaks understand our position and what's happening with us, too. So there's no hard feelings and animosity because this is a sensitive subject.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have they made any progress on public education?
Yeah. They've really, over the last 3 or 4 months, towards the middle of the summer to now, they have done some initiatives that tie directly back to what we're doing too. And they've been kind of out front with some more PR about it, because what happened during the first couple months that we extended the termination date is, as you probably can guess, rumors flew everywhere, and throughout the city of North Oaks about, we're these dastardly devils down the road that are cutting off all their water. And in spite of that, they were going to come up with their own solution. And
To the contrary, I heard from a North Oaks resident that we already gave away the elimination clause, and I said that's not true.
that's not true.
So that's my issue with the public education. Do they have they set up a website, to your knowledge, where they have information and decisions?
Points on water consumption are on both websites. Yes.
Okay.
Plus, Andrew had written a pretty good long piece on what we're going through, and actually so did Tom. And that was published in their homeowner association.
And it addressed a lot of the rumors that were out there too.
Right.
Both of them did.
Excellent.
So, like I said, we've got some good allies and some good partners between the two organizations that are working towards, I would say, a goal that will be shared.
And that's another reason why we want to bring Velamo into this, because a lot of the St. Paul Water Works water that comes right to Venice Lake. It's coming right through North Oaks. I mean, a major part of the whole water chain. So we're going to end up eventually tying surface water to groundwater no matter how we do this. So
Yeah, I agree.
Were there any immediate next steps, like another meeting scheduled, or what's
We're meeting monthly.
monthly? And this was the first one, so,
no, this is
This is the fifth or sixth one
oh,
now.
I thought you said it was the first one, okay.
no. We had skipped a month only because of conflict with everybody getting together.
Yeah, this is the first one that we've had talking points.
Sorry.
Yep. No, it's all good. So, I mean, mostly the first 4 or 5 were reviewing what it is we've been doing and addressing the reasons behind the move that we did. But now it's more dedicated towards solutions at this time.
And so next month, are you going to have the same folks from North Oaks, or are you going to have some new members who were just recently elected?
I expect the new mayor to be involved.
Okay.
Right now, Tom does a good job representing the council, and Andrew does a good job representing the HOA. And those are the two big players. But I would expect the mayor to take a new part in this because there is a new one. So basically what we're doing now is we wanted to review this with you guys so that we could take back some consensus that this seemed to be an acceptable path for us. And it sounds like it is, with the caveat in place that determination remains in place while we work through this.
Well, I think the key takeaways is exactly what the chair indicated: usage,
Yeah.
the enforcement, and public education. Those are
key.
Those
That
are
middle
key
one's a
for
tough one
well,
for everybody.
it is. But with the less water that's in the lake as of fall and going into the winter and not looking to replace it all, we may have more serious restrictions than we went into winter at, and we need them to comply.
Well, and part of the education too is to make sure that our residents understand that we're holding these developments in North Oaks to the same standard that our residents have to hold to.
Yeah.
So it's the same water restrictions, it's the same usage. If they can't comply with that, then we have to deal with that. So
Some of the issue is in the terminology that we're selling our water to them. They're not our residents, and so therefore they believe that because they pay for it, they have free reign to do what they want. And so as part of the agreement, you may have to have a definition that doesn't mean you get the right to do whatever you want with the water. That's not going to work.
all right, board, have any other questions or comments?
It's been a good discussion, and it will continue.
To be,
Oh, I did think of something, I'm sorry. How about the golf course? Is that totally separate, or is that do we supply that as well?
We supply that as well.
Go a separate contract with them.
all right, let's move on. Item 7, public hearings, we have none, so let's go on to 8, new business, the pavement management discussion.
Yes, Mr. Chair and Board, the past couple months, we've touched on this at our executive committees regarding the breadth of scope that we'd like to do in terms of our next year's pavement management and ongoing street projects that we've had here for 3 spring, summer, falls. In light of, and I should have said this at first, Tom Kelly, our finance officer, is on the line with his input if needed. And we've also got Larry Poplar joining us as our township engineer from TKDA. We have floated the idea to the three of you the last couple months about paring down, or I guess what Scott does with our street projects, in light of the impact that interest rates are going to have on long-term bonds. I'll hand this over to Tom in just a second. He's had conversations with our finance folks about what their forecasts are over the next 12 months. We'd like to have a discussion with you all in advance of TKDA presenting us with feasibility studies on the three that you know about at our next meeting. So we're not looking for a decision tonight, but we wanted you to get this going in your brains about, I think, a more solid conversation and decision-making time on the 19th when the guys present the feasibility study on these projects. So in light of that, Larry, do you want to give us a once-over of the three we're talking about?
Yeah.
And then Tom, if you want to chime in when he's done about where we are with interest rates. So Larry?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Town Board. So if you recall, we have three projects we're studying right now. We're looking at the Gilfillan neighborhood, Gilfillan Greenhaven area for a mill and overlay project, the Hammond Road and Township Parkway. We're studying that as a reclamation project. And then the third is the Williams and Hoxie neighborhood reconstruction project. And that's a full reconstruction. As we've kind of gotten into the feasibility studies, we're realizing that the Williams and Hoxie project is with the drainage and narrow streets and nature of that project, it's a bit more complicated than a normal reconstruction project. And so we are not prepared to present that one at the next board meeting. We're not finished with that yet. And with the complications that we see on that project, we are not looking to build that in 2023. It's going to take more time to study and design a project for that neighborhood. But the other two, we are planning to present the feasibility studies for Hammond Road and then the Greenhaven Gilfillan area. We aren't through with our cost estimating, but one of the things we are looking at, which is different than when we looked at it in more general nature in the pavement management plan, is some of the cost increases we saw with the recent bidding. So we're looking at likely a cost increase from when we looked at this with the pavement management plan. And then there's also a number of things on these projects that are, as we study them, are going to add cost. For example, the Hammond Road area, the curb, as we've gotten into looking at it, is in a lot worse shape than it should be for its age. And so instead of a project that preserves the curb other than some minor adjustments and replacements, it's at a stage where it should really be replaced. And we kind of ran into this a few years ago with Parkview Court as well when we studied that one, and we decided to wait on that area. And then also the entrances, the concrete and bituminous entrances to the businesses and residents need more work as well than is normal for a project like that. And then the third thing is the trails. When you do a project like this in both the Gilfillan and Hammond Road area, you want to address the trails. While you have mobilized a contractor, you bring the trails up to current ADA standards, and we're seeing some deterioration of the bituminous, so we'd recommend at least a mill and an overlay on that trail. So some added costs that I just want to prepare you for when we talk on the 19th. But I think tonight we're just looking for more of a general discussion around what the board's tolerance is for bonding. How much is the board comfortable in bonding for street projects? And when we do this project or this next cycle of projects, those bonds won't hit the books until 2024. So you're really talking about what your comfort level is with street improvements and bonding into for future tax levies. And with that, I can maybe turn it over to Tom to talk a little bit about that.
Tom, you want to give us just kind of a brief overview of, just as a reminder to the board and those who might be watching and listening, as to how we're going to fund the proposed projects, and then give us an idea of what you have gleaned from discussion on interest rates?
Yeah. Basically, back in September, I asked Baker Tilly to run some numbers based on what, all doing the entire project, which would be a bond issue of just over $4.5 million, and issuing the bond in the spring of 2023. He plugged in a couple interest rate hikes for that and came up with a true interest cost based on our current S&P rating of AA plus of 4.15. The 2001 bond we issued at 1.4. So you're up about, 3 percentage points on interest rates just on that. As far as doing smaller projects and so forth, you'd still end up with the same interest rate at probably 4.5. You might even go up a little bit higher because you're doing a smaller bond issue. The issuance costs are going to be, they estimated $50,000 on the 4.5, and you're going to pay that regardless. They're not going to go up or down much based on the amount of bonds. The 2001 bond, which was $6,550,000, was almost $70,000 in issuance costs, and you're down $2 million almost, and they're estimating at 50. So you're going to pay around 50, 40, 45,000, 60,000 in issuance costs, regardless of the size of the issue. The other thing that I thought about, when Pat asked me to do this today, kind of goes back to Larry, is when you go out for bonds, it kind of depends on what the market looks like. And I don't know if cities are considering cutting back on projects or not. If there's not a whole lot of projects going on and not a whole lot of bond issuances going on, we could get a pretty good rate because banks and stuff are desperate to issue bonds.
Hungry.
Likewise, project-wise, if contractors are looking for projects, we might get better pricing, but I guess that would be a question for Larry if some of his other cities are still using COVID money and doing projects or planning projects for 2023, or if they're scaling back, which, all affects the market.
Larry?
Yeah, I can maybe touch on that. We are hearing in the industry that a lot of private work is now less than what has been. A lot of developments have either stalled or stopped. And so contractors could be hungrier in that way. These last couple of years were fabulous years for construction. A lot of work got done. So that there very well could be a strong market and better pricing for projects next spring versus what we saw this last year. We're preparing maybe for kind of a worst case scenario with our unit pricing right now because we don't know. It's until we get some bids in the spring where we'll have a better idea on pricing. We're preparing for more of a worst case scenario.
Well, right now, you still have inflation out of sight, still have fuel costs driving it up, and there's still the supply chain issues of getting materials. So even if they're hungry, I don't think they're going to be able to, they're not going to go backwards. So, so I don't know if we can really, well, we can always hope for the best and plan for the worst, but
Yep.
I'm more curious, Tom, if we don't do the Williams-Hoxie, which is the more expensive one, till 2024, and we only do the Gilfillan Hammond Road, say next year, would we only bond for those then?
Well, I guess that would be up to you guys. I mean, we could do like we did in 2021 and do
2 years.
2 years of bonding together. It kind of depends on what you think 2023 is going to bring. If you think in 2024 interest rates are going to be lower and costs are going to be lower, then it would, wouldn't make sense to do the two of them. But if your gut feeling is interest rates are going to be high for the next few years, then we could probably do them together to kind of hedge that inflation and the possible rate increases of 2023.
And so you would save on issuance costs too, correct?
Yeah, you save on issuance costs.
Yeah.
And, again, going, not trying to pin Larry down on who's doing projects and stuff, but the banks and stuff, if there's not a whole lot of cities out issuing bonds or counties issuing bonds, they're hungry for these sort of things, so we could get a better interest rate that way. But if they're, if people are still looking to spend their COVID money and trying to issue bonds, then they kind of have their choice of bonds to purchase, and you don't get as good a price. So it really depends, to a certain extent, on what you think interest rates are going to do, and then what other communities are doing totally too. Because, like I say, in 2020, we didn't get as good of a rate because we did a smaller issue and we had less bidders on it. 2021, we did a larger issue and we had, I want to say we had like 12 different bidders on that bond compared to, 4 or 5 the year before. So, it all kind of depends on who's out doing projects and who needs to borrow money. That would be the other thing. I mean, if we did a much smaller project, the improvement fund has about $2.7 million sitting in cash in it right now, and depending on the utility portion, we may be able to fund a much smaller project internally where we wouldn't have to issue bonds necessarily. But that improvement fund also pays for the township shares of any projects we've done. So we need to keep that in mind as we spend that balance down, if that's what we do, is that, going forward in 2024, 2025, and so forth, we may not have the funds to pay the township's portion if we use too much of that.
That would be bad.
Yes.
Tom, can I ask a dumb question? It won't be the first time.
You can.
Okay. If we were to issue the bonds across 23 and 24, and I mean, it's kind of it's a guessing game for 23. Who knows what it's going to be out in 24? Do they, if you are issuing the bonds for a 2-year period like that, if you get out to 2024 and the rates have changed substantially, do they let you refinance it or anything, or no? At that early?
No.
Okay. All right.
So
You're
let's,
usually locked in, depending on the bond. There's usually a call date, but it's usually 7-8 years out, depending on the length of the bond.
Okay.
So you'd be stuck with that interest rate at least for 7 years, and then who knows? I mean, you can't even tell me what interest rates are going to do next year, let alone 7 years from now.
That's why I asked the question. I mean, if we're delaying out to 2024 because we're hoping for a better rate, that might be a mistake. It could get worse. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But that will also really impact our budget because now we're going to be doubling up on all these bonds.
Exactly. So we thought we'd give you an easy thing to think about.
Steve, questions, comments?
Well, I need to know a little bit more about what the feasibility costs are for these projects, because I don't really think we have the stomach to take on tremendous amount of a huge project in this environment. I just don't.
I would agree with that.
That would be good. We made a great decision the last time when we had 12 bidders for our bonds, and in 2 years we looked like geniuses at that point. And I don't think we are going to be that lucky this time around. And 2 years seems speculative at this point for me.
It's a gamble right now.
It is.
Everything that's inflationary is going up and down month to month. Who knows where it'll be in.
Janet Yellen here to tell us a little her projections of what's
I'm going
going
to pass.
You'll pass.
Scott, what do you got?
Okay.
Tom, what is the, I'm going to call it ramp-up time for Baker Tilly? If you tell them, okay, we want to issue these bonds, does it take them a week, a month, 6 months?
Oh, no, it's usually about a 3-month process. We got to put together all our financial information for the last few years for them. They put all the economic factors together. They then have to get on the schedule with the bond rating people.
Okay,
Get the lawyers to do all their paperwork and sign off on everything. And
so the reason
then-
I'm asking is, if I remember the last couple cycles, at every point that we have looked at these pavement management plans, the board is asked to, I'll say, make a decision. Do we move forward? We look at the feasibility studies, and are we moving forward? Okay. And we hold hearings, and are we moving forward? And then it comes to, we issued bids, and are we moving forward? And then we receive the bids, are we moving forward? There's always a stopgap, a point where we can say, it's just not going to work for us. Mm-hmm. So just to play this out, let's say we do the feasibility for the 2 projects, we move forward, and things are progressing, and you release bids, and they come back, and we just don't like them. At that point, when would you actually get Baker Tilly involved? Would it be, I mean, obviously you're telling them how we're going along with this, but if we have the ability up till when we receive the bids to say, forget about it, you've prepped the Baker Tilly about that, correct? You wouldn't call them up and say, well, we've canceled the project, and they would be shocked and dismayed. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things that they need before they can even start on anything is they need that feasibility study. And so until we have that done, we can't even start the process of issuing the bonds. And as you said, you guys, once you get that feasibility study, you're kind of already well into the process of knowing whether or not you're going to do the project or you're going to back out.
But we have the
So-
option all the way up to receiving the bids to cancel it.
I see what you're saying. Yep.
Yeah.
And would Baker Tilly be aware that we have the option of canceling it whenever we receive the bids, like in, I don't know, April or May or June or whenever it is,
Yeah, without any penalties, you mean?
without any penalties?
The only penalty you'd have is, depending on how far they've gone, you probably have some of their costs and some of the legal costs to pay for it. If they've done if they've had the bond attorneys get involved in that sort of stuff, but at that point it'd be pretty minimal.
Well,
Good safety net.
Well, the board has a lot of faith in our engineers. I mean, they put a number together and they're usually within like 2,000%, so.
pretty good.
That's why we keep you around.
Yeah, but it's usually, we've got a pretty good handle on, like I said, we get better bidding, we get poor bidding, but at least we've got a fairly solid number. So, and again, from what we've already got a debt load from the original bonds, and now we're going to be taking on at least 2 more projects. And even if the Hoxie one goes to the next year, this is going to run up our budget again, which we have. By the way, that's a good time to mention our budget meeting is tomorrow in this building at 7 o'clock.
Yep. Well, I guess the
Right
reason,
now, I have the whole project in the budget. It's because, like Larry says, the bonds really aren't going to hit our budget until 2024.
the reason I was asking the questions the way I was, Tom, is that you've indicated that if TKDA hears on the street that there's a lot of work out there, our bonds may be priced because there's a lot of work out there. But if there's not a lot of work out there, there may be more demand for ours. And that's why I'm thinking almost going all the way through, assuming that the feasibility is acceptable. I mean, if we go all the way through to receiving the bids, by then you should hear plenty of feedback, I would hope, from anybody who's bidding as to how busy they are. This is the only thing we've got going on now, and you've got 12 people bidding for this. Okay, well, maybe that would help the interest rate. And that's why I'm asking the question, this long way of doing it.
Yeah, you're right, Scott. I mean, that's kind of the key, or part of the key, is knowing how hungry people are going to be for work to give you a decent price. And then number 2, are there a lot of bonds flooding the market, as there has been the last few years?
And we're not going to know
The
for a
one thing we
while.
don't know is everybody got COVID money and has until the end of 2024 basically to have that money spent or have contracts in place to spend that money. So I don't know how many projects are still in the works for the next few years that would keep the bond market flooded, you know?
All right, Steve, you have anything else?
No.
So right now, we're basically a little bit of a holding pattern until we get the feasibility study, which will be in our meeting in 2 weeks.
Yep.
That's before or after that's before our exec meeting, isn't it?
It is after.
It is?
Yeah.
Will we have it maybe by then? Possibility, so we can,
16th, that Friday before, Larry?
if we can review it?
Excellent. So we've been talking about this kind of in passing for a couple months. We wanted to get something firm
Yeah,
started
okay.
so we could render some kind of a decision here this month.
Tom, one more question. I'm sorry, I just thought of this. Yes, we all got pretty excited a couple years ago when we had bonds with an interest rate of 0.25% or whatever it was. In the past, though, with in your experience, when bonds have been issued, what is I will use quote marks, typical interest rate that has been used for pavement management or general obligation bonds?
Usually cities will assess at about 2% over whatever bond rate they can get, you know, interest rates jump all over the place. I know some cities have an assessment policy that they have a like minimum interest rate that they'll charge. So even if interest rates like with the 2021 bond where we got less than 1%, they still would have done the assessments at whatever their minimum was. If it was like when I worked in the city of Plymouth, which was, I left there in 1990, so it's been a little while, but they had a minimum of 6% because for a while their interest rates were up in the 12s, 13%, and then all of a sudden the economy turned around and everything dropped, and they were down kind of like they are now, where they were like at 4% and so forth. So we had a minimum that we did at least 6% or 2% over whatever we issued the bonds for.
Okay, so but you have seen city bonds issued that were 12%, that the city
Oh, yeah.
paid 12% on. Well,
Oh, yeah.
4% sounds pretty good then. All right, that's good, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
You bet.
All right, if there's no further questions to Tom or Larry, I guess now we're just, hopefully we'll have all that stuff for our exec meeting. It'll give us a little more chance at a little easier setting to
Yeah.
beat this thing down a little better too.
Yep.
All right,
Thanks, Larry.
that takes care of payment management. 9 is added agenda items, we have none. 10 is open time, I see we have one resident. Mike, interested in giving us a spiel about something?
No, I just like coming to these, but I do have some questions.
Just introduce yourself with your address.
Yeah, Mike DeMars, 74, or I'm 50, not 74, 5474 Peterson. I'm curious about the feasibility study. This last discussion was mostly bond related, but Larry, I kind of latched onto something you said about updating the trails with an ADA standard, or because of the ADA standard. Is there a way for the board to sort of limit things that you're going to look at in the feasibility study, given the climate that we're in right now? Are there things that just shouldn't even be looked at right now and even brought to their attention, like something like that? Like, are trails being revamped due to ADA standards really something that, you know, is necessary to even look at right now?
Well, we'll break out those costs
Okay, all right.
and give the board that option. It's been standard in the industry when you're doing projects of this nature for the streets to do the trails, or at least get the ADA compliance. Most cities have an ADA transition plan that they need to follow, and the plan usually says when you're doing street projects, you're doing ADA improvements as well. But we can break those costs out for the board to consider.
And one thing is this: when we are adopting assessments for street repairs, street maintenance, you have to statutorily have to have a feasibility study done before the assessment can be adopted.
Yeah, sure. I'm not advocating to not do a feasibility study. I was just asking, in a feasibility study, can you put limits on what you're going to study?
No,
That's all.
That's a good question. I'd look at the statute again, but I think the statute kind of outlines what has to be done.
Okay, all right.
Oh, it's some, as I remember, it was pretty generalized, but you still have to follow, meet the statutory requirements.
I was
for you
going
to
to say,
assess.
when they did County Road H2 and Stillwater, the county, they had to put those ADA access up every intersection that didn't have.
Oh yeah, I mean that's
So we may be
Maybe
forced to do that, but I guess that's a review of the.
well, ADA is a completely separate issue. Whenever you make improvements, you have to make sure those improvements conform to ADA.
And they did nothing with the trail on H2, but the intersections, they
had to put those.
Yeah.
Those are nice ramps, though.
Nice ramps, yeah. But
Well,
sometimes
also, Mike, it's up to the board's discretion. I mean, we did trails over by Benson Airport. We didn't pave them. We made them dirt or chip or whatever for the time being. So sometimes it's, now here, most of these will end up being paved, but there's also there's some movement there too, so.
Right. Well, this goes on to what Scott was getting to also is when you do the feasibility study, Tom says that the bond broker or whatever has to get the feasibility study too, but you can change the feasibility. Like the feasibility study is just a report from the engineers, but you have to adopt the feasibility study, right? You have to tell the bond agents what you're going to adopt in this feasibility study or not, right?
They're going to want to see how much money we're spending.
Well, we did that on Peterson Road. We talked about putting in sidewalks for so long.
Yep, and we actually incorporated it into the road instead of having a separate sidewalk.
We didn't do it. Yeah, we
So
didn't
why that
spend the
road's so
money.
wide?
It is.
no, it's just for you. Fred.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for the clarification. I just wanted to double check on that. And then to backtrack to the JPA, are you, I didn't follow the full conversation. Maybe more people online or that are watching this are following it, but were you talking about renegotiating a JPA or the JPA or what is this? Is this an extra agreement that we have with North Oaks or?
Yeah, it's a JPA that's in place specifically towards our selling them water. What we are saying is we're not going to terminate the JPA. We're going to amend it in a couple of places that are more reflective of what's the reality. And right now we're under the auspices of the original JPA that required us to give a 2-year notice of termination to North Oaks or whichever customer we've got going. That we are suggesting when we've arrived at amending the JPA with some concrete goals that the city has to adhere to, we would eliminate the 2-year termination notice. That's just part of amending the existing JPA. So,
And this is a different JPA than the VLAMO, right?
yeah.
That we're part of?
Yeah.
Okay.
You negotiate a joint powers agreement, a JPA, each time you do something, because it's designed to share. It's designed to allow 2 governmental agencies to cooperate on one issue.
Right. So when I looked up JPA for White Bear Township, I found the VLAMO one, and so we were talking about education a little bit. I'm new to this. I don't know how many other people are, but I don't know where to find the JPA that you're talking about. If it's on our website,
It's not. It's not.
So is there a way for the citizens to sort of be more to know more about these legal documents? Just take a look at it?
Yeah.
If you want a copy, I'm happy to send it to you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I just didn't know if it was public knowledge or if it needed to be. but-
It's open to the public. Yeah.
Well, that's some light reading, Mike. Whew.
Yeah. You're going to enjoy yourself.
Well, I'm an engineer. I read specs. That's not light reading either. But
Yeah, this might be a delightful change for you.
yeah.
Everything is pretty much public. If you go to the office, they should be able to give you anything you want that relates to government.
That's why we're spending all this money on turning our paper into digital.
Making it easier.
But yeah, when I get in the office tomorrow morning, I'll send it to you.
Fair enough. Okay. No, thank you.
Yep.
That was all. So I appreciate the time.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, seeing as there's no one else here, I need a motion to receive agenda materials and supplements.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in
Thank you,
favor, say aye.
gentlemen.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 7:53.